Hi everybody.
Hello everyone.
A lot of people are asking us about how they can cope in the winter because that's the time when they feel like they're craving cooked food most. And that's their excuse that they're living in a colder climate and during the winter they just can't cope eating raw food, eating lots of fruit. So that's today's topic.
Okay. Also I would like to add, a lot of people say when they start eating raw or just fruit they feel cold, especially in the winter. Or some people when they fast they feel really cold, especially in the winter. You start.
So cooked food, I think the reality is that when people transit to a raw diet, there's a huge part of them that is very, very resistant to the idea because they are so used to so many types of food that even if they know at some kind of rational level that it's right to be eating raw, they don't really want to because they want to carry on with the addictions that they have. And this excuse, because I think it is an excuse, that they are feeling cold when they eat raw in the winter, so they have to eat cooked. I'm pretty sure it's an excuse because the same people will be eating cooked food in the summertime as well. It's not like they're eating raw food all through summer, maybe spring and some of the autumn, and then suddenly they can't cope and they have to eat cooked. I'm pretty sure they're never giving up that cooked food, so they're having it all the time. And the fact that they're living in a cold climate where there is a cold winter is just an excuse that they present to help them justify what they're doing, even though it's not really the truth.
Yes, it's a game of addiction. Addiction plays very, very smart, sneaky games with you, okay? So you're subconsciously looking for excuses. Why should you have that good food? And justify, okay? So this is good one.
Yeah.
In winter, you have to have something hot to keep warm. That's rubbish, because even if you have a hot cup of tea, for example, you may warm up, but only for like half an hour, if that, and then you're back to square one. True is that I never had problems like this. I got people who said you have to have something hot to not feel cold, some hot food. I never understood that because it never worked for me. Actually, in contrary, in the winter, I live in a winter where it's snow, -10, -8, up to -20, which is rare, but still. In the winter, actually, then was when I felt like icy cold water to drink. Nothing hot, icy cold water, which surprised me. It didn't make sense to me, but this is true. In the summer, I would never feel like icy cold water to drink. And then I realized, after years, what was it? It was because I like food and drinks in a room temperature. So my food is temperature of my environment. If I sit outside, the temperature would be of the outside temperature. If I sit in a house, and so on. So even if I have food in the fridge, I take it out before. I don't like it cold. I never like only ice cream. That was a different story. But besides that, I never like eat food from the fridge. And also when I ate cooked food, I always let it cool down to room temperature. I enjoy then more the flavor and everything about it. The hot food, if I had to eat it hot for some reason, I didn't taste the flavor as well as if that had a room temperature. So you play with your temperature, with your body. That way too. If on a hot day you drink icy cold drink, your body will break in a sweat. And that goes usually for people who are toxic, they're very, very toxic. I think that's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is feeling cold For me, when I start eat fruit, especially on the beginning, true is I felt after the meal, always my temperature cooled down and I felt cold. Even on a hot summer day, 35 degrees, I would get that sensation. My body temperature, I cooled down after meal. But within like half an hour, it was gone, that sensation. And it wasn't like I have a goosebumps, I was freezing. I just noticed I cooled down, like I feel a bit cooler. And in the winter time when that happened, that was unpleasant for me. So when I felt cold, I will just start moving. I don't even need to jump up on my feet. I may sit down and just do movements like this, or this, or this, or this. Whatever, some really fast movement when I was at home. And I will put extra blanket on me. If I sitting down watching something, some movie or something, I will wrap up. And even sitting down, I could make movements, quick movements for a few, even a minute, and I'm warm. Just think how to naturally warm yourself and don't go and cook food or go to some takeaway restaurant or something. Just forget that. This is again a silly excuse. Oh, I'm feeling cold now, I have to have something hot. I have to go and buy some cooked food.
Yeah, reflecting back on my childhood, and we used to watch TV and there would be adverts, and one of the adverts was for porridge oats, and I think the way they sold it was central heating inside you. There's an awful lot of societal brainwashing out there that make you think that things are the way that they tell you they are because they're selling you something. And most people have got it so ingrained in their head that that's the truth that they're not willing to step outside of that. And I know that as a child I would have the central heating inside you breakfast sometimes, and sometimes I would eat another breakfast cereal with just milk, and it would be cold. And I would have both in the winter, and I don't really think that I ever felt any difference. The truth is that because I'm now so acclimatized to living in the tropics, if I were to go to a cold climate country, I know that it would be very, very difficult for me. I would feel the cold, but I don't for a second think that eating cooked food would help me at all not feel the cold. I would feel the cold anyway. And I think that the cleaner you are internally, and I'm relating back to a little story now about the one fella who originally switched me on to eating raw. His name was Francisco Martin, and he was a Spanish fella, and he told me a story of when he was younger and he started eating raw. He went to Canada and he was working outside in just a t-shirt with all of his friends that were all rubbed up as much as possible, and he was working very hard there, and he always put it down to the fact that it was because he was eating raw that he didn't feel the cold as much as the other people. He said his pipes were so much cleaner that they weren't clogged up. Once you're internally clogged, then you do feel the temperature differences more. So I think on the contrary, if you can stick to eating raw in a cold climate, you'll feel the cold less. Sounds bizarre, but I think the truth is often strange, often not what we think it is.
Yes, that's so true. If I felt cold, on the beginning when I started eating fruit, it was only when I just lie down or sit up, I have no physical movement. Physical movement, this is good. I felt normal temperature, but my body never overheat. I may work hard sometimes in a garden or doing some more strenuous work. On a hot sun in the middle of the day, I would not sweat. I would feel the heat. I would get after a while a bit tired from it, but I would never feel like I can't handle it. So I believe if your body is healthy on healthy food, you naturally deal much better with those things. But the is on the beginning, I don't know how for mango, but when I switched only to fruit overnight, after meal, I sensed it's cool. It felt like the temperature dropped 3 degrees. And also, I still have that till today, but I have this only since I eat only raw fruit. And sun's going down. Just when it starts coming down, I feel cold. I sense the cold. And I have to go and put jumper, or not jumper, something like this. And I'm fine.
I think Katushka is much more sensitive to the cold than the average person. I think her blood temperature is not the same as everybody else's. It's always a bit lower.
It is.
And she tolerates the heat much better than most people. So I can tolerate the cold better than she can. Well, you can maybe tolerate being in cold water longer than I can.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's a different story.
And that's interesting.
But I'm building up a tolerance to that, I think.
But I think I can last longer in cold water because I practiced that since I was 15 years old.
I switched to a raw diet when I was living in Norway. I experienced the winter there. I mean, I'd experienced many winters there prior to that, but I experienced the winter there eating raw. And to be honest, I wasn't eating 100% raw, and I was cooking things. But I never ever made an excuse to myself that I need to eat something cooked because it's cold. I always knew that what I was doing was just caving to craving. Well, actually, there may have been times where I tried to kid myself that it was because I was cold, but I always knew that that wasn't the truth. I ate things like lentils and rice because I just really craved doing so. I just really craved that food, and that's the truth. Be honest with yourself. Stop making excuses, just be honest.
It's easy to feel guilty to do something we know it's too harm to us, and we don't want to feel guilty, so we naturally make excuses for ourselves. So we justify our wrong action to don't feel guilty. But regardless how we feel about this, if we give in, we suffer, and we do harm to ourselves, and it may take months before the body. And sometimes years, depends what it was, and how often it was, and how big amount of it was. This is all very important.
We prolong our recovery, really. And we've said it before when we were talking about eating raw till 4. At one point we talked about eating raw till 4.
Yes.
And how what it does is actually defeats the addiction, because it's like when you're an alcoholic, nobody would say, okay, just don't drink anything till 4 o'clock and then you'll be all right after that. Once you understand that something is addictive, you have to do your utmost to break yourself free of it. What would be natural for you is to find an excuse and to fall back onto it. But just be honest, you've made an excuse, you fell back onto it. Try again. Keep trying again. But don't try and justify what you're doing as something that you need to do.
Yeah,
because that's dishonest.
Yeah, be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
It gives you good feeling inside. Say, well, I done it, I just gave in, so be it, it happens. And look for a way, learn from this experience, why gave in, how you can change that, not to do that again next time. You just have to constantly work on it. You just can't go sleep on it, because that's another nature of addiction. It's with you forever. It gets weaker with the years, but it will be always there, always there. So if you want to all life, fool yourself and suffer, go for it. It's everybody's choice. Use logic, simple, common sense in the things you do. I lived in a cold country, Czech Republic, without heaters and stove, and I survived. You have to find in your mind the pure logic, find your own way how to deal with the things. Ask your own questions. I'm cold now, how I could feel warm. What can I do for it? I didn't even have I have a stove in a house in the winter, but I didn't have nothing to put in it. And I survived, I'm here. I'm not dead or anything because I was cold.
I think we've answered the question, so we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Yes, and if you have some additional question to this topic, please ask. And we thank you for all the comments and your subscribers and everybody who comes back to us. We really appreciate you and we love you and put the right love in your heart. What is all you need to be really happy in your life. So, till next time, all the best. Bye.